Hey there, listeners. Welcome to the latest episode of the Podcast of Record. We are going to do a deep dive on the 2020 Super Bowl and, most importantly, the advertisements that you got served.
By
during
deep
the Super
dive,
Bowl.
you mean all the miscellaneous takes we have around the table.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Correct.
So we should probably introduce. We have some people. We have additional people in the room today.
I mean, literally, we have the same people in the room
it's
as last
Good
week,
point.
but just with you and Kyle back.
Yeah, and Rebecca.
I mean, Rebecca was here last week.
I know, but I'm back now. But it's not Joe and Rebecca.
Yeah.
Say hello, Rebecca.
Hey, listeners.
And Kyle's back.
And
Hi.
Mute that mic.
You can't
Producer
see
Max,
me.
who's
Kyle-
mumbled in the back room.
Kyle came back from the wilderness.
Welcome back, producer Kyle.
Thanks. Hello.
So I insisted we do this podcast today because I think it's RIP Super Bowl. I think we've had peak Super Bowl.
Really, Joe insisted because he wasn't here last week and was really upset he didn't get to offer his takes on the Super Bowl, so we had to do another episode.
100%
Yeah.
true. But I mean, look, your take post Super Bowl is more meaningful than the one pre Super Bowl because it's an informed take.
Yeah, except that everyone released their Super Bowl ads last week. I mean, we had seen a bunch of the ads we're going to talk about today.
So I mean,
it's,
look,
I'm
there's
just saying,
still
like,
a difference.
everybody
between,
pushes out their
yeah.
ads now.
So I mean, this is probably a good place to start. There's a difference between we showed our ad on YouTube and then it actually shows to everybody.
Sure.
Like it's a whole different experience. Because people who wouldn't see it on YouTube, like people see those ads if they go find those ads. Like
Yeah,
you and
no,
I.
it's all an earned media game beforehand. I don't know that they're even putting that much money behind
Kyle's
them
Aunt
before
Karen
the Super
didn't
Bowl.
go on YouTube to look for it.
No.
So I mean that is probably the first thing I like. So why do I say we've reached peak Super Bowl? I think 90% of the ad load I saw yesterday was formulaic and not pushing the edge culturally, not controversial anyway. And the reason the Super Bowl ad got to be the way it was isn't because of the volume of people. And yeah, there was 106 million people watching, which is literally 4 times more than the next biggest primetime show on network TV. It's because you expect to be a little bit shocked by those ads, a little bit caught off guard by those ads.
Well,
and ads
look,
aren't doing that anymore. They're afraid to.
Yeah, look, man. I mean, Super Bowl ads have always been, or at least for the past 20 or 30 years, about humor, right?
Yeah.
And now brands are walking on eggshells and terrified to do anything that is too funny. So, I mean, it's not that Super Bowl ads have gotten worse. It's that the consumer audience has changed into something that they just can't please.
No, I mean, Madison Avenue is subsumed in this culture of political correctness and can't see that's not where the rest of America are. And so they're making ads that aren't funny. And instead they're falling back to these dramatic ads, which are good, but they're not as valuable as the humorous ad.
I mean, I'm not even sure it's that they're so consumed and can't tell. Just no one wants to be the next brand caught up in cancel culture.
No one wants to take the stock hit from being the person that on Monday morning just gets shit on by everyone for having a too edgy ad.
Right,
So that
and
might
gets canceled.
But that means that those ads are less valuable to watch. Case in point, what was the most controversial thing that happened last night?
JLo showing her crotch.
All right, Rebecca, run down the Super Bowl halftime show
Okay.
and give the listeners the reason why some people found it to be controversial.
So for those of you who are not tuning in, the halftime show headliners were Jennifer Lopez, the queen herself, and Shakira, with appearances by J Balvin and Bad Bunny.
Because we all know who those are.
I don't know. One of them I thought looked like the Napoleon Dynamite's brother. Kid.
Well, sadly, this morning when I was talking to Jonathan about it, or was it Kyle?
It was me.
Oh, it was Kyle. He goes, "Oh wait, those weren't the same person." I was
That got me off guard too.
I was like, "Nope, y'all aren't woke."
I did like
However-
that one guy's shoes that were very colorful.
Yeah, it was fire outfits. Anyway, so people are saying today that it was controversial and inappropriate and not family friendly. However,
Why?
Bring back Janet Jackson's nipple.
Because they were saying that it was a little too promiscuous. I'm not, to be honest, I don't agree, so I'm having a hard time seeing it. Apparently, the stripper pole that JLo was on was inappropriate. Apparently, the thrusting of their hips.
It's only a stripper pole if you're stripping on it.
Correct. That's my opinion. However, that and then the crotch shots that JLo had into the camera were inappropriate.
She had like 4 layers of like tights and clothing on.
Well, so that's part of it, right? Like, these people just don't understand costuming, where they're like, oh, it looks like she's totally nude wearing sheer clothing with bedazzled jewels on it, which, like, no, like, those are layers of tights, that nude-colored tights.
I mean, so you pointed this out a little earlier today when we're having a conversation, not record. What do you think is the big difference there? Who sees it as risky and who sees it as
the
doesn't?
only people who are upset about it are white people.
Important to clarify, Rebecca is
Puerto Rican.
Rican.
And so none of this to me seemed risque. As I was stating earlier, this is nothing unlike I've seen at family parties after everyone's 2 Coronas deep. Same shit.
After 2 Coronas.
Man, that is a party.
Aunt Rosa's had 2 Coronas.
That's how you
and
get coronavirus.
She's already sliding with her legs open across the kitchen floor.
Oh, yeah. The music's already pumping. We have our instruments out, and everyone's dancing.
I mean, probably some of the same music, I would assume.
For sure.
Like Shakira, some JLo.
I mean, JLo, yeah. You got to stick with your country.
What's Shakira, Colombian?
She's Colombian, yeah. So we like her, but, at family parties, you got to represent. But, yeah, so the only people who are pissed about it are white people and personally people who are just jealous. Like, you saw Karens were pissed off that JLo's shaking her ass, and I'm like, I'm sorry, your ass doesn't look that good in jeans, Karen. Like, it's just not going to happen. So that's my hot take on Super Bowl show. I thought it was phenomenal. And then I thought it was adorable, her having her daughter up there and singing with her.
It would have been nice if they had pointed out that it was her.
It looks just
daughter.
like her.
It does.
I can't tell.
I mean,
and they gave her the notorious JLo bun.
I was like, why is that child not in the cages like the other children?
for sure.
Because they have the little cages.
They had the little cages. Yeah, no, they were definitely trying to make a statement.
And then
there.
there's so much reading into that on the internet.
So here's a hot take. Shakira voiced a antelope, gazelle, something in the movie Zootopia, and apparently her outfit from the Super Bowl last night was the same as this gazelle's outfit when she voiced the character in Zootopia. So everyone thinks that it was a massive troll by Shakira to like wear the same outfit that her
antelope wears?
Cartoon antelope, gazelle, something.
So I think the halftime show being the most controversial thing is a problem for the NFL's advertisers. By the way, Rebecca, how many years after the Janet Jackson thing, you had this pulled up earlier, was it that the Super Bowl went without having a female performer? Like, I think Janet Jackson was like 05. Was it like 2011 before they had a female performer again?
Yeah.
And they like worked it back in. It was like Black Eyed Peas. So there was like 1 Fergie and 4 dudes, and they slowly like worked.
1 Fergie and 4 dudes.
Which is ridiculous, because if I were the NFL after Janet Jackson, I'd want female performers every single year in hopes that it would generate that kind of buzz again.
I agree.
1 Fergie, 4 dudes.
I mean, but the problem is, if the halftime show is the most controversial things that happen, you convince people, hey, I should watch the halftime show, because there's been a lot of really bad NFL halftime shows in the last decade. Everybody agrees.
Yeah,
for sure.
There's been some rough ones.
The Who was one of the worst.
Paul McCartney. There's been some rough ones.
The fact that I can't even remember the last few years tells you it was not memorable.
But the problem is, if that's where the controversy and interest is, it means that's not on the ads.
Well, yeah, it's because the Patriots weren't playing.
Yeah, well, the Patriots would have definitely brought the controversy.
Right. Well, I mean, to be fair,
they sprinkled in Tom Brady.
We still brought the controversy because when they announced pregame, like the NFL 100 stuff, and they announced Bill Belichick's name, everyone started booing. So he just waved all his rings on his fingers at the audience, and that was a pretty solid mic drop.
Yeah. But from an advertiser's perspective, you really want an ad to be the controversial thing, because that teaches people to watch the commercials, that they might see something edgy, they might see something crazy that people are going to talk about. If that controversy isn't in the ad piece, if it's actually in the game or it's actually in the halftime, and the ads are just kind of okay, you're slowly conditioning people out of the Super Bowl ad being a big thing. And I think we'll see run up in Super Bowl ad prices for the next few years, given how watched the Super Bowl is. But those, after I think the next 3 or 4 years, are going to start to slide, because if you're not going to do anything edgy or interesting or produce new IP in the ad, like, people just learn, like, I'll get on YouTube later.
I mean, we burst Baby Nut,
which was widely panned.
Yeah. First of all, he's not a nut, so there's that.
He's a legume, right?
I mean, he's a legume. Peanuts are not nuts.
Oh,
so he can't be a baby nut.
So somebody disagree with me that I'm wrong on Super Bowl.
No.
Thank you. Why? Gary Vaynerchuk's one of the biggest proponents of Super Bowl ads ever. Their company, VaynerMedia, had a couple
They
ads
had
in
three
there.
in there.
Three.
They did the Baby Nut ad.
Yeah. Make the case to me that the Super Bowl in 5 years is going to be, what it is today or the marquee ad piece. Other than it relatively has the biggest audience in entertainment.
So, I do think there's a case to be made that we continue going down the path of there is no single event, no single show, no single anything that draws the kind of crowd that the Super Bowl does. So it's the only place where you can make a single 30-second ad buy and hit a huge portion of America, right? There is no other platform on which you can do so. That's not going to change. People aren't going to start watching CBS 9 p.m. legal dramas again the way they were 10 years ago. They're not going to start watching reality shows, at least live when they air.
It's only valuable if the audience is conditioned to watch the ads. If you decondition the audience to watch the ads and it's just like every other game, what do you have? You just have a primetime NFL game.
I think that's fair. I think that, one major brand leaking before the Super Bowl next year that they are going to air a very controversial ad that is going to piss people off does it.
Yeah. I think it'll light that fire right back up.
Like, somebody just has to have the balls and the cash to do it.
Yeah. The problem is those things don't go together anymore.
I think that's fair, yeah.
Some listeners, I need to clarify what I mean by, the Super Bowl in its prime, probably, call it 95 to 2005, 2006. Maybe you could even say it goes all the way to 2016 when brands started to become really issue conscious. You could guarantee in a Super Bowl someone was going to run an ad that pushed boundaries in some way. It's going to push boundaries on language.
Even if the boundaries then are different than the boundaries now,
the time
relevant, it pushed the boundaries.
So GoDaddy's thing when they launched was they had this attractive female spokeslady, and she just wore a GoDaddy T-shirt. And in the 2000s, they'd run this ad where she would start to pull up her shirt, and then it would just cut the ad out. And it was super racy for that time period.
And then they would, the other point of the ad was they drove you to watch the rest of the ad at their website. So, you thought you were going to see the rest of the shirt being removed. That was a really important concept part of the ad.
There was edgy stuff that people were enraged about, right? And then
now we're just enraged about everything.
True. Maybe that's the point. There's other stuff. And you have the Anheuser-Busch was just hitting IP home run. They had the Budweiser frogs in the 90s. They had What's up in the 90s.
Yep.
And even though Kyle was like a little kid, you remember that, Kyle.
I have a hat that says "What's up?"
Yeah,
of course you do.
They were creating IP, and they can barely now keep the Bud Light Night alive. So, my point in that is, it's just not what it used to be culturally. And if it's not what it used to be culturally, people aren't going to, won't be a thing.
And I agree with that. This is mostly for the point that you told me to play counter argument to a second ago, but I don't think there's any other competing event, even though I agree the Super Bowl is on the decline. I don't think there's any other single event which has the ability to take away that market share for now. I agree it's overall declining, but it's not going anywhere, right? It's not going to another single event.
I'm going to say another thing really controversial.
Let's hear it.
About it. It may get me banned.
From what?
From Apple. I don't know.
What are you going to get banned from?
I don't know. I just feel like it's important. So this may get me banned. It's a preference. I think women watching football has impacted the efficacy of the ads in the Super Bowl, because prior to 15 years ago, even though women were watching the game, advertisers were talking to 18 to 35-year-old men, and they could just drop bombs right over that demographic over and over again.
Yeah.
And as advertisers become more aware that women are watching, they're shifting what they're doing to try and be appealing to both men and women, or in some cases, just women. And it's watering down, it's limiting the creative options that are available to those brands. And I've set this up specifically so Rebecca can make the counter argument that women aren't ruining the Super Bowl.
You're a sexist.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I just waited a whole minute for you
Yeah.
to finish your spiel to say that.
Rebecca, let me mansplain to you why Joe is not sexist.
I mean, make your case.
Well, no, I mean, I don't think it's ruining the Super Bowl because it's just creating a better opportunity for advertisers. You're saying that not enough people are engaging in the ads, but then you enter in 50% of the population and you're like, that's destroying the sport. Like, I don't think that makes sense. And
So a key piece of what we do is we make arguments to people that, hey, targeting a specific audience is high value, and you get the most value when you put content that's relevant to that audience over that audience. And the more mixed your audience consideration is, the more watered down, any creative you can do becomes.
yeah, but would you say that you couldn't play those ads during regular season? There's not nearly as many women watching throughout regular season.
I know. I mean, that's actually a good question. So some of those ads, no, you would not. Like Dove would not run an ad during Thursday 1 p.m. CBS slate, Jacksonville at Houston. I know a little bit about that
which
slate.
neither of them have
Jacksonville
been
is
to a
playing
Super Bowl.
Thursday at 1 p.m.
Yeah.
Man, they've just fallen even farther than I
meant
than I
Sunday.
knew.
I had Thursday in my head because I was thinking like Thursday night football.
They were like, we've never been to a Super
Man,
Bowl, so we're
yeah.
just gonna stop
Jacksonville
playing.
got relegated to that 1 p.m. Thursday slot. That's brutal.
Hey, you guys want to go on our lunch break to watch the big game? We'll
Yeah.
only get an hour in.
We went to
but-
Buffalo Wild Wings and had a Sprite because we had to go back to work.
All right, so counter on that.
I think it's a valid point that you're reaching now that advertisers have a larger spread. The idea that they're ruining the I don't know, you just have to be more creative. It's the same way, it's the same kind of advertising you would show on literally any other station. You're just pissed now that
But
it's
not
just
right?
to men.
Because on advertising normally what you're trying to do is base hits. You're trying to just get on base. Like, oh yeah, that ad happened. Like, yeah, Allstate, it exists. Awesome, right? You're just trying to get on base.
I'm trying to get to second base with my customers.
With a Super Bowl ad, you're swinging for the fences. You're trying to hit a home run.
Right.
And it's easy. Like, if it's just 18 to 35-year-old men watching, hitting a home run is easy because you're going to see a curveball down the plate every time. The more audiences you put in, man, I'm making sports metaphors to a woman while making a sexist comment. This is great. I'm violating everything. I'm going to get us banned.
Joe's
And
just
I'm sorry.
really upset that you can't do a GoDaddy like commercial anymore these days.
No one's stopping him.
He's like,
He
He can make whatever ad he wants
I
to.
forget what I was even
He's
saying.
like, I want less emotionally
That's
appealing
true.
Budweiser
Yes.
commercials, and I want more
I think that's
GoDaddy
true.
risque commercials.
I think that's true. But for the same reason you like the halftime show. I mean, that halftime show,
Because I like
you
watching Latinas do salsa on stage.
I like the halftime show as well.
Sure, exactly my point, right? Like, everybody's drawn. Why do we like the halftime show? Like, whether it's culture, like, people like the sexiness of the halftime show.
Right.
That used to be the province of the ad. That is no longer the province of the ad. That is a
Right.
problem for the ad. And the reason advertisers are running for that is their perception is that women won't want to see it. And because they're not trying to just target men anymore, they've pulled back on doing anything racy or edgy. My
Right.
hope is that the Super Bowl halftime show shows advertisers that, yeah, you can go there again.
Right.
Like, most of America actually hasn't gone insane. You'll have some people on Twitter that troll you, but for the most part, it's going to be fine.
I mean, my response to your original thesis on that was, I mean, your opinion is that the framework is not working. Like, that is the decline. I mean, personally, I think that's you watching the Super Bowl. Like, take the other millions of Americans who are inside of that framework and like that framework, who like the Budweiser commercials, who like watching those sentimental things. And now there's 100% of consumers of the game are now behind that commercial. So what you're saying is, like, they're not edgy, they're not showing up anymore, but now they can take that commercial and they can run it across YouTube and target it. They can play that commercial, and now 100% of people are going to like it. And they know that, and they're inside that framework. And even though, like, you disagree with that framework, doesn't mean the people watching the Super Bowl disagree with that framework. They like it. They like
Yep.
the emotional side
So
of it.
agree, but it makes the Super Bowl ad less valuable because it becomes less of a cultural phenomena.
But what you're saying, Kyle,
So-
is they have more value because they can use it now.
Yeah, because they can kind of use it
Yeah.
everywhere.
My wife was super tuned into the Super Bowl ads last night, and she could not have cared less about the Super Bowl ads 6 years ago.
Yeah, but I mean, you're kind of also in a different place with your wife. You worked, in that industry. People are paying more attention generally.
Yeah.
Um,
But that's an eyeball that those advertisers didn't
wouldn't
have.
have. True.
In her case, 2 eyeballs, but
So on the topic, there were some good ads. So let's just do round table, best ad, worst ad. Matt, you want to go first?
liked the most or what you think was most effective?
Let's just go like the most.
I mean, I don't know that this was the right context for it, but I thought the Google ad was exceptionally well done. I thought that they basically took the conversation, even though they were telling you, like, hey, we're collecting all of
We
your
know all your
data,
most intimate details,
and did it
and
in
you're
a
gonna
way
want to give it to us.
where you were teary-eyed at the end and
Yeah,
felt really great
take
about the
it.
fact
Don't
that you
let
were
Grandpa
giving them
forget about
all
Grandpa.
your
Take the
information.
data.
Yep.
Sell them adult diapers too.
Well, Google doesn't want to do that. Amazon wants to do that.
Now Google will take the adult diaper company's ads.
What about least favorite, Matt?
Oh God, that Sabra hummus commercial was just weird.
Oh my god.
With like Ric Flair and T-Pain and like
Oh god, the IP mix ones where they're mixing IP,
Yeah.
I hate.
just
It's so cheap. It's
yeah.
a cheap creative response to something.
yeah. I mean that was also a VaynerMedia ad too, by the way.
Yeah.
Did not care for that
I
one.
like instantly when IP is mixed, I stop respecting the creative that went
Yeah.
into it.
the
Walmart.
the Pop-Tart pretzel ad was super weird. Didn't think highly of that one.
I don't think I saw that
But
one.
I
Did you see
understand
it?
why they have to go weird because they can't do funny anymore.
That's true.
So that Jason Momoa,
Mhm.
what's his name?
So
Ad
I didn't
was,
see that one, so I can't say anything
Oh,
about that
thought
one.
it was
so
hilarious.
basically the summary
It
is
was
like
weird,
he comes
though.
in and
It
he,
is-
everyone's like, oh, swoon. He's like in his house, but he's like
I want
hot
to be
and buff.
myself
and
when
then,
I'm at home.
Yeah, and then he just starts stripping away his muscles like it's a bodysuit,
That's
and he's
creepy.
like really thin and skinny underneath, and then just like rips off like his abs. Like it was just really uncomfortable in my opinion. I was like, what did I just?
It was
watch?
weird.
I
That's
think
what it was.
I think if
It
you
was
can't be
weird.
funny, if you are
You gotta be
visually
weird.
disturbing, you can be memorable too.
That's a
Mm.
great
And I
way
think
to
What
put
was
that's
it
what they went
for?
with.
It was-
What was it for?
I have no
Rocket
idea.
Mortgage.
Rocket Mortgage.
Okay,
Okay.
It was to
see,
be at your
Because he
home.
could be at
yeah,
home. Yeah.
when it popped up, I turned to Jonathan and we just started talking about how weird it was. So I didn't even see who it was
So,
for.
The Hulu ad with Tom Brady was brilliant.
Oh.
Yeah.
Like
Did that scare you? Were you like, oh my God, is he announcing his
He's gonna
retirement?
announce his retirement on a Hulu ad. The Disney
well, you didn't know it
Corporation
was a
has paid me
Hulu ad.
$45 million.
So when it
to
came out on
announce
Friday night, and he tweeted, and I mean, I'm in all these like Patriot Twitter accounts and fan groups and whatever. People were overanalyzing, like, no, he's walking into the stadium. Like, no, he's walking out of the stadium. And then some dude like got a screenshot. He's like, no, here's a picture from the tunnel of Gillette. Like, it's definitely Gillette Stadium. Like, people were going crazy trying to overanalyze this photo. Nobody even knew it had anything to do with the Super Bowl on Friday. It was just like, oh God, is Tom Brady retiring? He couldn't have been announcing that he was going to another team because he's not allowed to actually do that until March. He's still locked up until March. So they announced on like Saturday that they were going to say, it was part of a Super Bowl campaign, and during the Super Bowl they were going to say what the picture was about. So, I mean, Hulu was one of the only companies, maybe Planters did this to a certain degree as well, that I thought had a sufficient amount of earned hype leading up to their ad
To the,
Yeah.
yeah. I
without
think that-
releasing the ad in advance.
Yeah. I think releasing the ad in advance is a big mistake.
I agree.
Agreed.
Tease the ad, set up a storyline, releasing the ad in advance, problem.
All right, favorite. What was your favorite, Rebecca?
Oh, I don't know. Matt kind of took mine with the Google one, but I actually really like the Bill Murray one just for nostalgia purposes and like considering Groundhog Day is this week. Like I thought that was well done. Yeah.
Great
Kyle
movie.
liked it for the Jeep purposes.
What was your
Oh,
least
yeah.
favorite?
That Jason
Jason
Momoa
Momoa.
one.
Okay.
Disturbed.
Yeah, I mean, if they can't be funny, they got to visually make something that's
Just make you uncomfortable.
yeah.
Joe, favorite, least favorite?
The Snickers ad where they fed the world, I thought was the most creative
Okay.
piece that I saw. Least favorite, all of the other.
That Snickers one was hilarious.
Yeah.
And then when like they threw in like the basic people at the end and everyone was like,
And they
oh,
fell
thank
in the hole,
God.
like,
yes,
it's working.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was like, that's pretty clever.
And I think that one's underappreciated. But I think that's what a Super Bowl ad should be. If you want to make a comment on culture, Snickers did it the right way. I think and maybe I saw this ad wrong, but there was a Dove ad, and they had two like women like in a space shuttle.
This is going to be sexist.
Oil of Olay.
Actually, this is the opposite of sexist. And because last night we had my baby daughter in her like astronaut onesie that I bought her at the airport, so
Yeah.
this one really struck me.
Were you disturbed when your baby daughter was watching the halftime show?
She was like chewing on rock or something during the halftime show.
The Rock.
The
Dwayne The Rock Johnson.
It was an Olay ad.
Okay, so they're in this like space.
One of the three
capsule.
women was actually an astronaut.
Okay, so they're in this space capsule, and they're like, every time you retweet, we'll give money to women's STEM education. Great, awesome. Like, women can be in space, women are competent engineers. And they're like, what's this button do? And at the end of the ad, they accidentally eject themselves from the space capsule.
Oh, I did
So,
not
so
see
you
that.
made this whole case that did I see that wrong? Like
I didn't see that one.
Like, so they make this whole case: women can do STEM, women can be astronauts, and they accidentally throw themselves into space.
Yeah, they're dead.
But we're also just dumb girls.
That's not what you. If you want me to retweet your tweet,
like leave it on a high note.
Yeah. So I'm just convincing my daughter she can be an astronaut and she won't die. But then these two people in the commercial like women can do this too, and then accidentally suck themselves in the space vacuum.
Well, I mean, part of the joke there
Maybe
was...
I saw it wrong. I don't know.
No, that's what happened. But part of the joke there was like two of the three women were not astronauts. One was an actor and one's like a comedian. The two that hit the button at the end and ejected themselves were the ones that weren't actually astronauts.
I still think that undermines
I mean,
the
I agree,
message.
but like the point being, like the astronaut knew what she was doing and the other two didn't know
Yeah.
what they were doing.
So that would be my
Your least favorite one?
my least favorite for just a bunch
Also,
of meta
and
reasons.
I'll give credit to your wife on Twitter for this one. Like, you spent $5.6 million to run an ad to donate up to $500,000.
Oh yeah, dumb.
Yep.
Like for every retweet or whatever, you'll donate $1 up to $500,000. Like,
Or you just
or
give
you
the
could
money.
or you just could have donated $6.1
Yeah.
million
Like, you know what would have also made news if you gave $6 million to something?
to a charity.
Yeah. I think that would have made some news.
What about you, Kyle?
I had a bunch of favorites. I liked a lot of the ads. I liked the Budweiser one. I think my favorite that was that should be a part of this podcast. I actually liked the Facebook one, the Facebook groups one. I don't know if y'all
I
saw
didn't see
that
it.
one.
I thought
Did you
it
see
could
it?
have been about half the length it was.
For sure.
I
yeah.
thought that about the Google one too.
Yeah. My least favorite was probably honestly the Google one. I thought that one was.
It's cheap. I'm telling you,
Yeah.
it works, but it's cheap.
Yeah.
Those dramatic ads are cheap ads.
Yeah.
But it worked.
I was just like, this is making me very sad. And not in like a happy, sad, emotional, sad kind of thing. It's just
Remind
like-
me I married.
What was the Facebook one again? I remember seeing it and being like, "Oh, that was."
It was
good,
just a
but-
bunch of
Facebook groups about rocks.
what?
Maybe we saw a different ad.
About rocks?
Yeah, so like they made this
Ooh,
like
did
wordplay.
Facebook A/B test their ads?
So there was it
Oh,
was like it was
maybe.
a group about rock and roll, and then there was like a group of like Jeeps driving over rocks, and like so every group had a theme about
Kyle's in
rock.
that group. He knows.
Oh, because then they had like the Moab one.
Yeah. What?
Oh,
I mean, did you
okay.
see a different ad?
I didn't know it was all had to do about rocks.
Oh yeah.
Connection.
The central theme is every group had something to do with a rock. They
So it
were
started with one and then like just went through
Yeah.
its progression. Oh, I like
rock
it even
music,
better now.
rocks. They were driving over.
So it's like
rocks.
yeah, okay, I
Yeah.
see that. No, I mean that one. I like the Budweiser one. I thought that one was good, but that's one of like Joe's. Oh, my least favorite though. My least favorite
Mhm.
was the Coke energy drink one
Oh God, what
with
a waste.
Jonah Hill, Mark
What a waste.
Scorsese.
That was so bizarre.
All they did was take
They just-
IP,
yeah.
take actors, and then have them be themselves. and
Who
that
was the
sells
third
brand.
person in that one? Does anybody remember that one? It was Mark Scorsese, Jonah Hill, some other important person, and I was like,
I
"This
have
is
all the ads
ridiculous."
up here. I can look at it.
And they're like, "Coke energy drink," and I'm like, "That's gave him the
Yeah.
energy to text back."
That was a minute spot too, so
Yeah.
that
Yeah, it
was
was
$11.2 million.
$11
It was
Yeah.
terrible. Oh yeah, it's whatever. Other favorite ones, the bubble butt one was really funny.
Oh, that was
yeah, I
hilarious.
like that one. That was funny. I want to know who the third person that one was.
There wasn't a third person.
There wasn't.
I just watched it. It was just two of them.
Would you identify any of these ads as changing the advertising paradigm in any way? That they've introduced a new concept, a new idea, a new model, a new strategy to advertising?
No, I
Yeah.
think right now, like, before the strategy would be kind of like divide, right? Divide like groups into things they're interested
Yeah.
in or something that would only appeal to specific folks. And I think right now, considering like the political landscape, everyone's trying to unify. And that's why you see that with the Snickers commercial and you see that with the Facebook groups, like trying to find commonalities amongst people.
Yeah.
I mean, even the two political ads looked the same. I couldn't tell the difference between them until the
Yeah.
end. So, I mean, even those two that were supposed to be so different from everybody else, they
Yeah.
seem the exact same
I
as
mean,
any
I-
commercial in the Super
I
Bowl.
think probably Bloomberg was the biggest loser in that. Like, I'm not sure either. I think either one of those campaigns would probably wish they had the money back. Like, Trump's was a bigger positioning play, doing what he did about an African-American woman and getting her out of prison. There's a bigger macro.
Oh, they
political reason
explicitly
for doing
said,
that.
"Thank you, President Trump."
Yeah. there's a bigger strategy
Donald John
behind
Trump.
that.
I said his middle name's John.
Yeah.
That was
You don't
Jay.
watch much impeachment hearings. bro. But the Bloomberg one, I think, it was halftime, right?
Yeah.
Man, that got
I
buried.
think it was right before. Yeah.
That got buried in,
Yeah. Shakira and
Yeah.
JLo.
Yeah. Little Caesars was kind of.
Oh God.
Little Caesars has to bring in Dwight Schrute to point out that they're doing the same thing that every other chain pizza company started doing 30 years ago, which is delivering pizza.
I forgot
Yeah.
about that.
Like, hot damn, Little Caesars is finally going to bring a $5 hot and ready to your door.
For $5.
Wait, so
Thanks, Dwight Schrute, for telling me that happened. So the Toby one, the one that had the guy
really
that plays
smart use
Toby
of
in
IP
The Office.
though. They never mentioned The Office.
Yeah,
just
they didn't
used
have
the
to do any
character.
licensing. I thought that one was super well
Yeah.
done.
but did every character of The Office make it into a commercial?
A decent number of them. John Krasinski was in the
Yeah.
Hyundai one.
Kevin was in a training one, like training.
Oh my God.
videos
Y'all
and
remember the
stuff.
chili one? I thought of Kevin.
I
with
did
that.
too. When
Chili
that woman
was good.
threw up the
Hit
yeah.
the fan.
So maybe I'm
Kevin's
missing it. Maybe
famous
this
chili.
one didn't air, but I saw it on digital. So maybe that was the approach of like not buying a Super Bowl spot, but then like promoting it solely on.
Oh
digital.
no, that what's his
saw it?
name? Brian Baumgartner has been doing ads for that company
Yeah.
for a year.
All right.
Yeah, they've been
so-
running that ad for a long time.
By the way, 30 minutes is up.
All right, let's
so-
finish this with.
Well, I want your take on what you think the highest rated Super Bowl ads of the night were, and I was watching CNBC a few minutes ago, and they had USA Today's rankings
Mhm.
from what they call their ad meter of what the 5 highest rated ads were of the night. So I'm curious as to everyone's. Give me your top 3. What
Google.
do you think? Okay, you think
Yeah.
Google's in the top 3?
Google's gonna
Yeah.
make it.
Pick 2 more.
I don't know what I can just say. But just give me one. Google. That's the
Okay.
only one I know. In the
Rebecca?
top 3.
Jeep.
Okay, give me a couple other ones that you think are in the top 3.
I think Budweiser, just because they're
Okay.
notorious for Super Bowl commercials.
One more.
Snickers.
Okay, Kyle.
Budweiser, Bud Light, Google.
So Google is the only one of those 3 that made it into the top 5.
Give us the list.
The Jeep one did as well. So the
Oh,
Jeep
okay.
was the highest rated one.
Old people.
Yeah, Jeep was the highest rated ad all night. It had a 7.01. The second one was the Hyundai ad that had John Krasinski and Rachel Dratch
Yep,
and somebody
the
else.
Boston, yeah.
The third ranked one was the Google one, the Loretta ad. Number 4 was Doritos ad, the Cool Ranch.
I didn't see it.
I didn't even see that one.
With Old Town. Oh, I don't even know the song.
Oh,
Lil
that was
Nas
the one with
X?
Lil Nas X?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
They
The
had-
Old Town Road and
Yeah, yeah.
what's his name?
The guy,
Sam
yeah.
something. Elliott. Sam Elliott.
Was the Audi one in there?
No, the
Oh.
5th one is the Rocket Mortgage Jason
No.
Momoa.
Oh.
Unsurprisingly, I think everyone
Yeah.
can guess what the lowest rated ads of the night were.
I mean,
The political ads.
yeah.
Oh,
I mean,
okay, yeah.
the political ads are always going to be
Yeah.
shit on, no matter what. So let's finish by if you were on a Super Bowl ad development team next year, thing you would suggest that they do different.
Put JLo and Shakira in it.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah. I like Jan. That's a good one.
I learned this in marketing, and as much as I hate it coming out of my mouth, like sex sells. So, like, put hot women in skippy outfits out there, and that's probably
I
a
say
good
bring
one.
back the Whopper. What was it, the Carl's Jr. commercial? The big old
yeah.
burger?
Yeah.
Oh, that is
Now they're trying to sell me plant-based sausage biscuits.
I don't think that they realize that their audience hasn't changed that
Yeah,
much.
no, the Hardee's audience was not looking for the vegan sausage biscuit.
Go to a Hardee's and see for yourself.
Like Dunkin'
Yeah.
Donuts did that
Yeah.
too. It's like, come on.
2020 is
Yeah.
weird.
Mine is probably take a stance on something that everyone isn't going to agree with. Like, it's very easy
Yep.
to take a stance on something that everyone's going to agree with. Like, you shouldn't be an asshole. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. Thanks, Discover card.
Or just
Oh,
like
terrible commercials, by the way.
Both the Discover ones were
or
terrible. I
just do
agree.
something edgy.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
Tide ones were super weird
Yeah.
with the
I got a stain.
It's Sunny
This-
guy.
Yeah. Is it gonna set? All right. Mine would be, don't do a Super Bowl ad. Take your $5.6 million
And go on a vacation.
Bonus it out.
and announce you are giving $5.6 million to some random charity right before the Super Bowl, and that instead of doing a Super Bowl ad, this is what you decided to do.
Yeah.
That's good.
So, I mean, WeatherTech sort of did that.
Yeah,
They
a
didn't
little
give all
bit.
the money away. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, WeatherTech, like the only place it mentioned WeatherTech in the ad was that the donate link is at their website at the end.
But like it's funny because like exactly with the Olay, was it Olay?
Olay.
Why like
Yeah.
where I mean they could have how much money do you think
Well,
they actually
So
raised?
firstly, I think this
from that
like brand
commercial?
cause thing is a total misread by Madison Avenue of what
Mhm.
consumers want and think. I think it's not going to work for them the way they think it's going to work, because at the end of the day, like consumers understand like that's a business, like they're doing it for their own interests. So there has to be a way in which this isn't where, and so it's just like that. They
Yeah.
spent 5.6 million, probably 8 million total when you include the creative, to raise $500,000.
Right.
If you care that much, just give
Just
the
give
money
the
away,
money away, yeah.
and then get the earned media off of it.
that you could have gave a lot more than
The
5.6
avocados from
actually.
Mexico one was super weird too,
I didn't
with
see
Molly
that.
Ringwald.
Need to watch it.
The Audi one was weird.
I saw it happen.
That was the Game of Thrones girl, right?
Why was she singing Let It
Why
Go?
was she singing Frozen songs?
Because that's
Yeah.
all the IP they had available. That's all they
Exactly.
knew. Every agency.
Like, oh, we'll take
every
this.
agency
We'll take one of the girls from Game of Thrones,
Like-
and we'll give her an animated song, and she can just drive down the
Like,
road singing.
Hey,
it.
what IP is available for us to license?
Well,
We
no,
have Infinity money.
It's like IP characters,
Yeah.
and then like in this one, it's like
IP
IP
creatives.
creatives.
It's like
Yeah.
a slot machine, like
Whoa.
into Game of Thrones.
Frozen. All right, I think we probably should end on that.
All right, yeah, we'll end on "Let It Go." So
Yeah.
you can let it go and end this podcast episode
Kool-Aid
now.
Man.
Uh,
Vanilla Ice.
As always, jump in your podcast app, give us a rating or review. Check out our newly relaunched website at podcasterrecord.com. It's beautiful.
We'll link it this time. We didn't link it last week.
So rude. So rude. But we'll link it. We're going to put a survey up there in the coming weeks, too, to see what kind of content people want to hear more or less of, so we know what the audience likes.
Less Joe.
More me.
More Rebecca, less Joe.
My mic's
He
off.
forgot to turn his mic on when he screamed more women, so it just sounded extra creepy. All right. We'll catch you next week. Thanks for joining us.